Ladies and gentlemen, we've got some big news on the potential end in regards to the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Donald Trump saying he's going to be speaking with Putin. That's going to be happening tomorrow. He said this today. This just came out, and we've got new news regarding territory. And Trump also talking about how the land is potentially going to be divvied up, along with what I think the goal of both Russia and Ukraine is in terms of this potential peace deal. But let's hear what Trump has to say here first when it comes to him speaking with Putin. And remember, we talked about Zelensky and Ukraine agreeing to a ceasefire as long as Russia agreed to it. And then Putin said, yeah, I'll do the ceasefire, but I have to talk to Trump first. So maybe that's what this is. And then we get the official ceasefire because people saying, is the ceasefire happening? Is it not happening? There's still fighting going on between Russia and Ukraine. Well, this might be the ceasefire if Putin talks to Trump. And Putin's reasoning was that if there's going to be a ceasefire, he wants to be on the same page in terms of what he wants out of the peace deal. Because you do the ceasefire, it's 30 days of negotiations. If nothing happens, the ceasefire is null. So you need to work something out. So Putin's going to have his demands. They're going to be pretty extensive. Ukraine is going to have their demands. And when you're dealing with something like this and you're trying to mediate it like the United States and the European countries are, there's going to be give and take from both sides. That's just the reality. But at this point, it's probably about 80-20 Russia in terms of the things that they get versus what they give up. And I think the sticking point of the negotiations could be Ukraine demilitarizing or not. That's something that Russia really wanted in 2022 when they had initial talks. Ukraine was close to a deal with Russia. It was the European NATO countries that told Ukraine, no, we're going to sanction the hell out of Russia and cripple them. And maybe they would get driven out of Ukraine because of how bad their economic state was. Evidently, that didn't happen. However, you could say that Ukraine has certainly fought well in terms of keeping Russia from completely taking over their country. Right now, it's about 1/5, 1/6 potentially going over to Russia in terms of an annexation. But Putin is basically saying, I don't want to go to it and do a negotiation blind, having accepted a ceasefire deal if we're not even close when it comes to the negotiation. So that's why he wants to talk to Trump, which supposedly is happening tomorrow, according to Trump. Now let's see what Trump has to say.
Nice to see you all.
Likewise. Congratulations on the golf games, sir.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun. It's good. It's been a good time. And we learned a lot. We're doing pretty well, I think, with Russia. And we'll see if we have something to announce maybe by Tuesday. I'll be speaking to President Putin on Tuesday. And a lot of...
Well, you hear what he said? He said we might have something to announce on Tuesday. My guess is that's the official ceasefire. If he talks to Putin and Putin likes what he hears and Trump likes what he hears, my guess is it'll be an announcement of the ceasefire and then it'll start the peace negotiations, as long as everything goes smoothly on Tuesday.
A lot of work's been done over the weekend. We want to see if we can bring that war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance.
What sort of concessions will you be seeking to have Putin make to get a deal done?
Well, I think we'll, be talking about land. It's a lot of land. It's a lot different than it was before the wars, And we'll be talking about land. We'll be talking about power plants. Because that's up, it's a big question. But I think we have a lot of it already discussed very much by both sides.
You'll ask him.
Ukraine and Russia.
You'll ask him to
We're already talking about that, dividing up certain assets. Yeah, and they've been working on that.
Mr. President, are you concerned at all about any retaliation?
Yeah, well, it seems like this war is over. I do want to say this was yesterday, you can tell, because it was after his golf tournament. But that's when this interview was on the plane. But yeah, Trump is saying everything's getting divvied up. My guess is there will be the formal announcement on Tuesday of the ceasefire with Russia agreeing to it. And you're seeing kind of the final fighting right now to try and get the most leverage in terms of these negotiations. You do have Zelensky pushing back against the idea that there was an encirclement within the Kursk region, which is the very small area that right now, and it's disputed, but Ukraine says they still have it. It was reported over the weekend that Russia had driven them out of an area that technically is Russian land. And this was the first time, this happened back in August of 2024, the first time Russia had been invaded since World War II, or a foreign country had occupied their land since World War II. And so they got this small region on like the northern side of the Russia-Ukraine border. It was meant as a strategic thing by Ukraine to force Moscow and Russia to spend reserves trying to get back this area. And so obviously this is a situation to where Putin and Zelensky both realize the end of the war is coming. And when you're talking about having this ceasefire, you want as much negotiating power as possible. So if Ukraine could keep that area, that's part of the negotiation. Hey, we have this area. It is inside of Russia. It is a small area, but we still have it. So we're willing to give this up in return for X. But if you don't have that area, you can't say that. So that's why I would imagine that Putin is trying to get it back. And that's why over the weekend we heard the news where Putin said that he had the Ukrainians surrounded in the region and that he was driving them out. Zelensky is saying, no, that didn't happen. That's because there's a dispute based on negotiation leverage. Zelensky wants to say, we have this region, we're willing to give it up, but we want this. Russia wants to say, no, you don't have that region. We don't have to make any concessions to you because that's ours. We've taken it back. So we'll see what happens in terms of this region and whose it actually is in control of. But there was a report that Russia had driven Ukraine out. And I think that's another indicator that we are going to be entering a peace negotiation phase because of this kind of ending conflict. And it's like they're jousting for leverage in negotiations. And that's why you see the UK come out and say we're willing to send troops. France is coming out supporting Zelensky. Some of these European countries realize the end is very near and we want Ukraine to have as much negotiating leverage rather than limping to the finish line. And that's also why Ukraine, we're not exactly sure what's going on with the minerals deal, but they wanted to do a minerals deal with the United States to where the United States would get billions of dollars worth of their minerals and rare earths. And the reason is because they want the United States on their side, or at least still backing them to a degree during negotiations. They don't want the United States to completely abandon them, and then they're like, okay, because now Russia has even more leverage over them. They still want the backing of the U.S., and they do still have it because when Ukraine agreed to the ceasefire on the conditions of Putin agreeing to it, the United States started sharing intelligence reports with them. I believe the money, there's a pledge of money, which obviously is irrelevant. Ukraine knows it's irrelevant. They're not getting much more money, if any. It's more so just to say, well, listen, we don't have to come to a terrible agreement with Russia. If they're demanding the sun, the moon, and the stars, we don't have to agree to that because we still have all of NATO behind us. Rather than saying, well, the United States is not behind us anymore. We might have a few of the European countries. They want everyone still behind them during these negotiations because it's the leverage in it all. So that would be my take on this. This is an interesting thing with the Kursk region. And Russia saying they've driven them back. Zelensky saying no. This is all part of the negotiation process. It's understandable. But overall, this is good. This happened. This was yesterday when Trump said this, but they're meeting on Tuesday, and I think there might be an announcement on a ceasefire. And they're talking about the land and maybe a DMZ, possibly in between Russia and Ukraine, with Europe, NATO troops probably patrolling it. My guess is Trump is going to be a stickler on not having U.S. troops there. Though who really knows, because I know that Trump had troops redeployed, I think to Poland, that were previously in the United Kingdom, putting them slightly closer to Ukraine. And this is all done as strategic maneuvers. This is not, oh, we're going to fight. There's nothing like that. And that's not even what the UK wants. It's all posturing. You're not going to elevate this at this point to where it's about to end and really spiral it out of control. Ukraine knows the war is ending. Russia, they're very likely going to agree as well. And it just comes down to, in negotiations, how much does Russia get? How much do they have to give up? How much does Ukraine get? How much do they have to give up? The sticking point for Trump might become the security assurances. And my guess is Trump is going to want to put the burden of the security assurances on the European NATO countries, not the United States, in terms of keeping Ukraine safe. You've also got the idea of the minerals deal with both Russia and Ukraine. Putin saying he wanted to do a minerals deal with the United States, whether or not some type of economic deal happens there. The U.S. does have a bit of a better relationship with Russia, which is a very good thing. It's a very, very good thing. I'm not saying this is a Trump supporter. I'm saying this is just a normal American. We do not want to be enemies with Russia due to their military might and our military might, we would much rather have a respect for each other than they say, well, they invaded a country. Well, yeah, look at the NATO expansion. Look at what happened in 2014 with the West involvement in the Ukrainian revolution, turning Ukraine to the West, the manipulation. I mean, we can go back and forth on this, but I'm just saying, to have this relationship with Russia to where they're like our enemy, it creates a unstable environment throughout the world. And we don't really want that. So listen, this is good what Trump is doing. You've also got another thing here I wanted to talk about, Trump's approval rating. Yeah, so this is Real Clear Politics. This is just the aggregate, the total composite. Trump sitting basically even 48-48 in terms of approval. People say, well, this is bad. He was positive. His honeymoon's over. Well, no, this is probably as bad as his approval rating will ever be. This is amazing news. This is amazing. Because think about it. All of the bad stuff when it comes to the economy, and a lot of it when you get these normie people, if the stock market is down, if there's certain problems, you get these narratives like the eggs and stuff. We know the eggs are not Trump's fault. In fact, the eggs are going way down. And I'm not even saying Trump gets huge credit for the eggs, but it was liberals that were the ones harping on the eggs. And I said, this is why they were up so much. They're going to go down. So now does Trump get credit for bringing them down by like 50% in price in the last week? But look, the eggs are the eggs. When you've got something like this, we've got gas down. We have the inflation report came out last week. It's down. Trump has talked about doing huge tariffs on April 2nd. If that happens, we might have another bit of an issue here in terms of the economy. But the overall point is, eventually, whether it takes 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, the tariffs, they're a long-term solution to a short-term problem. Well, they cause a short-term problem, but they're a long-term solution. They're going to cause higher prices initially. They're going to cause some turmoil in the stock market. The stock market does not like tariffs when they get enacted. Long-term, we know tariffs are very good for the United States, and the United States can utilize. It's like we're trying to create money. I mean, we're seriously in debt. We need to somehow extract money for the government and cut some of these programs. This is what Doge is trying to do. But we have to, I mean, that's why Trump's talking about cutting the military by 8% over 4 years. We have to cut some of this stuff. That's why Trump's talking about entitlements. We have to look at this. It's a $2 trillion deficit. It's $37 trillion in debt, or it's going to be. It's like 36.7 right now. This is a big issue. So we're trying to create revenue, and the way to do that is through tariffs. Listen, we'll see what Trump is going to do on the tariffs. I can't predict it because he changes it every day. But what I can say is you can see this immigration plus 7%. But what about all the conservatives now? There's like these conservative people like, well, Trump's been bad on immigration. Then why are the border encounters at a 30-year historic low? Think about that. I mean, Trump has sealed the border. Now, yeah, Trump, he's getting more money now for the deportations. The deportations need to increase. Absolutely. But the immigration, sealing the border, it's all happening. The economy, listen, people are going to say this because it's the stock market is down. We understand. It's -8 in terms of the economy. Foreign policy, that's very vague. I mean, what are we talking about? He's ending foreign wars. That's exactly what we wanted. You've got the strikes on the Houthis, which were reactionary strikes because they were disrupting operations in the Red Sea, and not just for Israel. Not just for Israel. There's a lot of trade that flows through the Red Sea. It's a very important waterway. You've got this group. I mean, they're going to get taken out. I mean, it is what it is. We don't like doing military strikes like that. That's really not escalation. That's a de-escalation move by Trump in the Middle East to tone down the situation. I mean, we have to be able to have shipping routes. I mean, this is a very important area. So, Biden was going to do it. He never did it. Trump ended up doing it. But obviously that's not going to be in terms of this, because I'm sure this poll was done before those Yemen strikes happened. Inflation, see, that makes no sense. How is inflation minus 12.5%? Trump has it at a 4-year low. If you look at the trueflation, which is a more accurate measurement than inflation, it's like 1.5%. Trump has gotten inflation down. That's why the interest rates are going to have to come down. And listen, this is Trump's ultimate plan. We'll see, because you can't predict the tariffs. Trump has potentially massive tariffs going into place on April 2nd. He's talked about it for a while. It was going to be April 1st, but because it's April Fool's, he didn't want to do it. If Trump puts these tariffs in place, it's going to be a hindrance to the economy again. But it will for sure guarantee interest rates come down on May 9th. And inflation by the way, would keep decreasing as well. Now, honestly, it's like, I don't know how much we can take of this in terms of the crypto stuff if this keeps going down. I don't know how much we can take. But the point is, you have to get the inflation down, you have to get the interest rates down. They both have to come down. It fosters a better economic environment. We have the investment, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, foreign countries, foreign billionaires saying, yes, we're going to invest billions. Yes, it's like $4 trillion now invested into the United States. This is all happening. But like the inflation being at minus 12, that's not correct. People need to really understand that Trump has brought the inflation down, and even the top economic experts were saying, yes, this is lower than expected. It was like, oh, it was expected at 2.7, it's 2.6, but it's going to keep going down, especially if Trump puts more tariffs on April 2nd. But we'll have to see. I mean, that's something that'll be interesting. Generic ballot, Democrats plus 8.8. It's irrelevant. It's too early for that. But yeah, I mean, this is a good approval rating because think about it. This is as low as it's going to be. The approval rating probably goes up from here, or maybe like the lowest it'll be is like a month from now, depending on what happens with the tariffs. But in general, we're on the verge of ending this war in Eastern Europe. That's the big story. And tomorrow, I think we get the formal ceasefire announcement. And then we get the peace deal negotiations. And they're going to try and swing it like, well, Trump is giving in to Putin. He's giving up land. This is disgusting. But I told people that there was always going to be annexation of Ukrainian land. That's what had to happen. If you didn't want that, I mean, listen, why don't they blame Biden? Seriously, when you look at this, the only way, even going back to 2023, even going back to when the invasion started, they could say maybe sanctions would have crippled Russia and forced them back to remove the sanctions. But like, just go back to 2024 even. Why was there no NATO escalation? Like, they blame Trump now for giving up all this land. The only way you're getting that land back, unless you crippled Russia to the point where they retreated because they didn't want to deal with sanctions and they wanted them lifted, which didn't happen. But the only way you're getting that back outside of the economic sabotage of the Russian economy would be through a NATO offensive in eastern Ukraine. That's the only way you would get that back, which would be escalation. So they would want to escalate the war. So why didn't they do that? I mean, they keep talking about, well, Trump's giving up all this land. This is disgusting. So how do you get that land back? The sanctions didn't work. And they're like, well, maybe just keep them on, But it's just like they want the escalation, but they can't say they want escalation. So it's like, what do you want to do? What do you want Trump to do to get that land back? It's not going to get back. These are negotiations to end this. And they're like, oh, they should try and get back Crimea River. No, but they're not going to get back Crimea because it was never going to happen. I mean, the only way you would get that back is if you had sanctioned economic leverage over Russia or an invasion of Crimea to take it back for, I guess, Ukraine. But either way, guys, that's just the current situation. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.